We are back. This is the third segment of Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small, co-host Paul Ogden. We're here with our guests Jeff Cox, who's also an Indianapolis attorney, as are Paul and I, and Matt Stone, who is a Libertarian Party candidate for City County Council here in Indianapolis, and also blogs on Indy Student blog. Jeff's blog is No Boxes Allowed. Paul's blog is Ogden on Law. Is it Ogden on Law or Politics?
Ogden on Politics.
I always say Ogden on Law. I just get it screwed up that way. We're taping this or filming it or whatever you call it on the internet these days. See, I'm 56 years old, so I miss kind of like the new terminology. We're doing this in Big Hat Books, which is in Broad Ripple. That's on the north side of Indianapolis, 6510 Cornell Avenue. Big Hat Books has bunches of books, one of which is Crime Pays by Mark Small. It's a fictionalized account of a Ponzi scheme in the 1960s here in Indiana. They have a bunch of other good books too. And also it has spaces here for rent for special occasion, like the space we're in right now. The second segment of the program, we're going to talk about whether government should subsidize pro sports. Matt, what's your take on that?
I think, like many things, government has the ability to do that. That in theory, it's something that could be done, but in practice, it's often, at the very best, done poorly, if not completely incompetently.
Are you saying that we don't invest enough, or we invest
I think
little, or?
I think there's more just than does professional sports bring in business, or does it increase overall taxes and stuff like that. I think also to some cities, some municipalities and areas, that is also an image to have. And if you can make the argument that that image is worth having, compared to the tax levies, because it's a very expensive business for various reasons. And I don't watch Sports Center that much, or keep up with actual sports in general, so I can't really go into why professional sports is so expensive. I just know that it is.
It is expensive because the owners make it expensive. I mean, they charge $8 for beer. I think it's $8 now.
Well, the players make it expensive.
They make it expensive, but see, the owners have made it kind of expensive there too, because like here in Indianapolis, we built Lucas Oil Stadium.
And let's talk a little bit about that, some of the statistics or whatever.
Sure.
Built Lucas Oil Stadium. We tore down the RCA Dome.
No,
it's
the Hoosier Dome. That's what it was named.
Correct. That was not paid off before we tore it down. It was rolled into the Lucas Oil Stadium debt, which Lucas Oil Stadium cost like $750, $800 million or so. Much of that was due, or a portion of that was due to the retractable roof. If you look at the way the deal is set up, the Colts get all the revenue related to the Colts, which is understandable. They get half of the non-Colts revenue. So if you have a concert at Lucas Oil Stadium, they get half that revenue. The City of Indianapolis, through the Capital Improvement Board, runs the place. They are responsible for maintaining it. The Colts get the revenue off advertising. They get revenue off of concessions.
They get all the revenue from concessions for their games, right?
For their games, and I think they get some revenue off of when there is not a game.
And then there was a question of whether the Colts, and maybe we should back up on this. Mm-hmm. See, the Indianapolis Colts were not always Indianapolis Colts. They were the Baltimore Colts. And I went out to Baltimore to see a baseball game in 1990. And friends of mine out there said, whatever you do, don't mention that you're from Indianapolis, because people were still there. We built the Hoosier Dome. And I was down here one weekend because I was living in Chicago. I said, why do we have a football stadium here? And they said, well, they're going to get an NFL team. I said, well, where are they going to get an NFL team? Well, in the middle of the night, the Ursays moved, with Mayflower moving vans, moved the Baltimore Colts here. And at the time, the offer that Indianapolis made the Colts was so lucrative that the Baltimore Colts at that time were the most profitable franchise in the NFL, with all the perks that we
Indianapolis. Once they moved to Indianapolis, they were
It
most popular.
became over with the Lucas Oil Stadium. It
Yes.
became very, very
The
popular.
Colt-
With the dome, the original
Yes.
dome.
I don't know if they. I think it's when they moved to being the Lucas Oil Stadium.
No,
That
no.
he became a billionaire. Ursay.
No, well, Airstate's personal, so that was more, I think that was only a year or two ago.
Yeah, but I think his went up to being a billionaire because of Lucas. But when his father moved the Colts out here, they at that point were the most profitable franchise in the NFL because of all the tax subsidies we gave them, all the tax credits, all the expenses that we lifted off of them just as they relocate here. And most studies indicate that at best, there's a neutral economic factor of a professional sports franchise being in a city.
Well, I would dispute those studies.
No, that's at best. The rest of them say it's negative.
Well, I would dispute those studies as well. But let's toss a couple of points into the Colts situation specifically.
You don't like the Colts.
Well, I've got other football teams I root for, not the Colts. But
I think
let's,
the Browns maybe one of them.
well, yeah, the Browns, the Chargers, the Steelers. But let's go into the Colts situation specifically. Number one, the original deal that brought the Colts to Indianapolis, that they offered Irsay, it basically rewarded Bob Irsay's terrible management of the team. When he was in Baltimore, he drove the team into the ground. He was threatening to move it every second week. He would fire coaches on the field. He would call plays himself from the press box.
President
he
Nixon
drove-
did that one time.
He drove the attendance down to almost nothing, and that's a very big football area in Baltimore. What Indianapolis did with Irsay was basically reward his bad management with tax money. The second thing that I want to point out is that both for the original dome and for Lucas Oil Stadium, the funding was not supported by the public.
There was no referendum.
There was no public referendum, but both polls that were taken both times show that the public did not want to have their taxes raised to pay for stadium, especially for Lucas Oil Stadium. The polls that I saw showed 60-40 against it, yet they were passed by the city county council.
Oh, wait, were they passed by the city county council? Paul, you might know this better. The Capital Improvement Board. That's an appointed board, isn't it?
Yes.
Does that board have the ability to levy a tax?
Not by itself. No. They have to have authority from the state legislature.
If I recall correctly, with Lucas Oil Stadium, what the state legislature did was they passed a set of bills saying that Marion County and the donor counties could have a 1% sales tax increase on food and beverages. And then I think most of the counties had to have their legislative bodies, city councils, vote on it.
City
I think like
council
7 out of 9 of them
voted
for it.
to raise the hotel tax. We have one of the highest combined hotel sales tax in the country. They voted to raise that. They were given the authority to raise that from the state. So the council raises that tax. The money goes to the CIB.
And CIB then does with it as it determines it needs to.
Right.
And that's why the CIB also has like 2 non-Marion County members. I think there's one from Carmel or one from Hendricks County or something like that.
And kind of throw them aside. Well, I mean, I just don't understand how, the studies that I read, okay, and the studies I've read reference to, say that when you heavily subsidize a sports franchise, first of all, you're dealing with a monopoly. The franchise owners have a monopoly.
It's a natural monopoly.
It's not a natural
It
monopoly.
is a natural monopoly.
No, they were given a monopoly in the 1920s when the United States Supreme Court ruled that it was not a violation of antitrust laws for Major League Baseball to run a monopoly.
But
It doesn't extend to sports. Though.
Yes, it does.
I thought it was just baseball.
I thought it was just baseball also, but it's a natural monopoly because if you have multiple sports leagues, the quality of the product goes down.
I've seen with these alternate football leagues in the past several years.
Yeah, the quality of football in them is not good because you're expanding the pool of football players that would need to make up these leagues, and by doing so, the skill level goes down. That's why it's a natural monopoly.
So that means that the free market doesn't work there.
In the case of a sports league, it does not.
Well, then here's the other part is these owners know that they have, like pro football, they got 32 teams. Let's use a hypothetical. Let's say one team their franchise is based on one quarterback. And that quarterback is possibly the greatest quarterback of all time. And they've enjoyed a run of about 12 or 13 years where they've done really well, especially like the last 9 years they've made the playoffs. That quarterback, because of age and time, etc., retires. He's no longer there. The citizens of the city become upset because they're not winning anymore, and they go back to wearing sacks over their heads at NFL games.
Assuming they show up at the NFL game.
That's true, because you can't even afford to go to a game. I mean, it's so expensive. What happens then? I mean, the hypothetical owner in that situation just moves to Los Angeles, which puts a bunch of money on the table.
Well, under this lease, it'd be very difficult for Irsay to move the team right now. But Irsay, when he negotiated the lease for Lucas Oil Stadium, he got everything. I mean, the city really gets nothing out of it. They'll say that there's economic activity generated by the Colts, and there is, but it is probably less so than it is in other cities.
Well, you're leaping on the notion that my hypothetical involved the Indianapolis Colts, but go ahead.
Well, it's pretty obvious that it did. It certainly didn't involve the
Cleveland Browns.
Of course. In part because the Cleveland Browns and in Cleveland and in Cincinnati, they had voter referenda on the stadiums in those cities.
And between those two cities, the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, how many Super Bowls between them have they won?
That doesn't matter. Cleveland Browns won 3 NFL championships, but that's not the point here. The people of Cleveland and the people...
That was before 65.
The people of Cleveland and the people of Cincinnati voted to spend their tax money...
On teams that bad.
On stadiums. They voted to spend their tax money on NFL stadiums, baseball stadiums, and an NBA arena. Because it was important to them.
Then let's go for a moment and consider... We were talking about this the other night. Let's consider about whether... Okay, let's say that somebody said we need to vote on whether to build a new football stadium for the Colts. Okay, and let's say that they're moving to another one besides Lucas Oil Stadium, which incidentally they wanted to put in fewer water fountains than was required by code.
So people would have to buy it.
Yeah, so that people would have to buy water.
Well, the biggest problem with Lucas Oil Stadium is the roof.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I mean, they wanted this big, expensive, retractable roof, and then they never retracted it.
Well, but they didn't put drainage in, which would have cost $500,000.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. So let's say that Irsay wants a new football stadium, or else he's going to go to Los Angeles. And they do put it on referendum. What happens? You're going to have a huge PR blitz to convince the voter. First of all, they're going to, as Paul pointed out,
They'll write a rigged question.
they're going to write a rigged question like, are you for Mom, apple pie, the girl next door, the Indianapolis Colts getting a football stadium, and all that is good and pure in America, or not? You know, and they'll do it in an election when there's normally low voter turnout.
Or they do it in a special election,
Yeah.
like they did with Worcester.
Yeah. What do you mean, Wisher?
Worcester,
The
Hospital, they had held a special election
Just for Worcester.
specifically for that.
There is no Wisher Hospital.
I'm sorry, Worcester
Changed
Memorial.
names, not changed names.
What does it change to?
Yeah, it was originally Marion County General.
Oh my God.
A person donated money and they changed it. I forget. I think it's an Indian name. Starts with an
Yeah.
So you'd have a huge PR blitz. You'd have all the radio shows, including the morning comedy shows, all having Colts on full time. We're done with this segment. We'll be back in just a minute. Jesus returns.